Lies a narrative waiting to be told. A story of progress, challenges, and the transformative power of civil society organizations. Our journey, spanning 15 dynamic countries, from Cameroon to Mauritania, unveiled a tapestry of insight. Through meticulous mixed method research, we uncovered the untold story of CSOs. Quantitative data intertwined with qualitative narratives brought forth a revelation. CSOs are the unsung heroes, actively shaping local solutions, ensuring accountability, and fueling critical development dialogues. Their impact, monumental yet challenging. Resource constraints and transparency issues cast shadows on their remarkable endeavors. But change beckons. A call for transparency, strategic partnerships, and innovative funding models. A blueprint to redefine CSOs' roles, empowering them to lead West Africa's progress. As we present these revelations, we invite you to partake in the dialogue. Join us, the voices shaping the future of CSOs in West Africa. Together, let's pave the way for a more impactful and sustainable civil society sector. Join the conversation. Be the change.
Au cœur de l'Afrique de l'Ouest se trouve un récit qui attend d'être raconté. Une histoire de progrès, de défis et du pouvoir de transformation des organisations de la société civile. Notre voyage, qui s'est déroulé dans 15 pays d'Amérique du Cameroun à la Mauritanie, a dévoilé une table d'idées. Grâce à une recherche méticuleuse fondée sur des méthodes mixtes, nous avons découvert l'histoire inédite des OSC. Les données quantitatives et les récits qualitatifs se sont entremêlés pour aboutir à une révélation. Les OSC sont des héros méconnus qui façonnent activement des solutions locales, garantissent la responsabilité et alimentent des dialogues critiques sur le développement. Leur impact est monumental mais difficile. Les contraintes de ressources et les problèmes de transparence jettent de l'ombre sur leurs efforts remarquables. Mais le changement s'annonce. Un appel à la transparence, au partenariat stratégique et au modèle de financement innovant. Un plan pour redéfinir les rôles des OSC et leur donner les moyens de conduire les progrès de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Alors que nous présentons ces révélations, nous vous invitons à prendre part au dialogue. Rejoignez-nous, les voix qui façonnent l'avenir des OSC en Afrique de l'Ouest. Ensemble, ouvrons la voie à un secteur de la société civile plus efficace et plus durable. Participez à la conversation. Soyez le changement.
Thank you very much.
In the heart of West Africa lies a narrative waiting to be told. A story of progress, challenges, and the transformative power of civil society organizations. Our journey, spanning 15 dynamic countries, from Cameroon to Mauritania, unveiled a tapestry of insight. Through meticulous mixed method research, we uncovered the untold story of CSOs. Quantitative data intertwined with qualitative narratives brought forth a revelation. CSOs are the unsung heroes, actively shaping local solutions, ensuring accountability, and fueling critical development dialogues. Their impact, monumental yet challenging. Resource constraints and transparency issues cast shadows on their remarkable endeavors. But change beckons. A call for transparency, strategic partnerships, and innovative funding models. A blueprint to redefine CSOs' roles, empowering them to lead West Africa's progress. As we present these revelations, we invite you to partake in the dialogue. Join us, the voices shaping the future of CSOs in West Africa. Together, let's pave the way for a more impactful and sustainable civil society sector. Join the conversation. Be the change.
Thank you very, very much for that very insightful and reflective piece from the communication team of the West Africa Civil Society Institute on this unique occasion, the day we launch this wonderful research report brought to you by the West Africa Civil Society Institute with the support of the Ford Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining this one and special discussion, a discussion in which we are going to unveil the findings of a research report that some or many of you have contributed to as we, as civil society actors, find ways to act.
Jim, you have to unmute.
Thank you very, very much. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, you are very much welcome to this very special discussion on the report that exposes the impact of our work as civil society actors or organizations across West Africa. We have contributed to monumental impact despite the challenges. Sometimes the scale of the impact has not been sufficiently documented. We can sometimes not speak to the specific impact that we've contributed to the development of our region as a whole. However, thanks to the West Africa Civil Society Institute, and of course, special thanks to the Ford Foundation, they saw the need to take steps to make sure that the work of critical actors like you are well documented for posterity's sake. What contributions have we as civil society organizations made to the development of our sub-region? The democratic gains, the peace that reigns in the region, economic and social contributions. What are all of these? Also, what must we do differently as civil society organizations? And how can we do this in innovative ways to ensure that we leverage on the gains that have been made over the decades to contribute to the prosperity and development we want for our region, for the future generations that will be coming after us? Today's discussion is actually one that will bring us more insight on key evidence that has been documented in this regard. More so, we will be having this report at our disposal for use and to inform our work moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be having some speakers and panelists who will be joining us for this conversation. And of course, we have the Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute, Ms. Nana Afajino, who will be with us. Good morning, Nana, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim. Good morning.
Great, thank you. Great. Also, we have Dabesaki of the Senior Program Officer of the Ford Foundation for West Africa, who will equally be joining us for this launch. Dabasaki, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jim. Thanks, everyone. Nice to be here.
So glad to have you despite your very tight schedule. But, you know, given the importance that you have shown for this piece of work right from the inception up to this date, we are really very happy to have you here with us. We equally have Dr. Solomon Amua, who is a civil society and development expert. He is actually one of the pioneer research fellows of the West Africa Civil Society Institute Research Fellowship Program. He teaches sociology of work and organizations at the University of Ghana. And of course, his research interests are in the domain of governance and sustainability of the nonprofit sector, philanthropy, decent work, social protection systems, and gender studies. He has a wealth of experience in civil society and non-profit research, and he has led a team that has worked assiduously over the past year to ensure that we have this report at our disposal. Thank you, Dr. Solomon, for joining us, and good morning.
Good morning, Jim, Nana, and everyone. Good to be here. Thank you.
Great. Of course, to discuss this particular research report, we equally have with us some critical actors within the civil society sector who will be sharing their insights with us, and of course, how we can, make use of the findings of this report to shape our work moving forward. We have Ms. Rosalind Thomas Richards, all the way from Liberia, and by the way, congratulations to you and all Liberians for the landmark victory that you and experience in terms of democracy that you showed us in the past few weeks. Ms. Rosalind serves as the Executive Director of the National Institute for Public Opinion, and for several years, she has a wide range of experience working as an activist within civil society and, of course, contributing to the wholesomeness of the Liberian society by and through civic engagements and democratic practices. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Rosalind, and good morning.
Good morning, James. Thank you.
Great. We also have Mr. Dory Emmanuel, who is the Save the Children Senior Humanitarian Advocacy Officer for West and Central Africa. He holds a master's degree in Information and Communication Sciences and Techniques and a master's degree in Diplomacy and International Relations. He has evolved as an innovative, results-oriented leader for several years within international cooperation agencies, the United Nations system, and now with international non-governmental organizations. He also brings to this conversation 13 years of advocacy research and campaigning and communication with strategic engagement with civil society organizations. Thank you very much, Mr. Dory, for joining us, and good morning. Bonjour, Monsieur Dory.
Morning. Bonjour. Je suis très ravi d'être parmi vous ce matin. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. And of course, the last but not the least, from the biggest country in terms of population in the region, Mr. Audu Liberty Oseni is the current coordinator of Media Advocacy West Africa, Mawa Foundation, which is based in Abuja, Nigeria. He is a development communication expert with over 13 years of experience, having worked in different non-governmental organizations and media outfits in Nigeria. He holds a master's degree in strategic communication from the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. He has an avid interest in governance, public accountability, communication, and advocacy. And of course, he will be bringing his rich experience and insights on how, as civil society organizations, we can make use of the findings that will be put at our disposal today. Mr. Audu Liberty, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations to Liberia.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you. And again, this conversation is going to be in the English and French languages. Pour ceux qui nous joignent et qui parlent la langue française, bien vouloir utiliser l'icône d'interprétation qui est en bas de votre écran pour choisir la langue de votre préférence. Vous pouvez cliquer sur FR qui signifie la langue française et vous allez suivre la conversation en langue française. And also, you know, if you want to use, follow this conversation in the English language, please use the interpretation icon at the bottom of the Zoom platform and choose the English language. That way, you can follow the conversation strictly in the English language. Thank you all once again, ladies and gentlemen, and permit me to invite the Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute to welcome us to this very important conversation. Over to you, Nana.
Thank you very much, Jim. And I'm not going to take a lot of time because I want us to get to the reports. But I must say that personally, for me, this is one of the very important times for WACSI, and I believe for civil society in West Africa. We have been looking forward to really documenting the contribution of civil society to this sub-region. There's so much, but a lot of it is anecdotal evidence. We talk about it, we know about it, people say civil society is contributing, but what are we contributing? How are we contributing? How can we measure it? And how do we actually show that we are not just a bunch of rabble-rousers who are, you know, just here, but there are actually things that civil society organizations are doing that are not only contributing to our political and social development, but also even to the economy of our countries. And so this, for me, is a very important report for all of us who work in this sector, and also for us to know civil society, as we've known it, is changing as well. And so it is good to document what it is that we have done as the years have gone by. And I'm very happy, personally, that today we can be launching this report and sharing it with all of us who have been part of this process. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for making the time to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana, for keeping it brief. You don't know how itchy I am, like many others, to really get a grasp of what this report has for us in the region. Of course, Dabesaki, you have really been at the forefront, working very closely with the team at WACSI to make this happen. We are indeed pleased to have you here. And of course, thank you all at the Ford Foundation for your contribution to the work that we are doing. Dabesaki, you have the floor. What remarks do you have for us here this morning?
So, Jim, I'm trying to decide which person's prompt to follow. Nana's one that is short, or your one that says, you know, give us the whole history. Let me see if I can stay somewhere in between. So, first of all, congratulations to you, WACSI, Charles. I haven't seen him on the call. Charles, Jim, yourself, everybody, for not just producing this report that we will discuss today, but also for the attendance in this particular activity. And as of the last time I checked, there were over 176 people on the call. I think that is a testament to the importance of the topic that you are going to be discussing today, but also to the amount of work that you've put into to market and communicate the work. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think the second thing that I would like to say is just in terms of the way that we set this up. I think in some sense that it would be useful to learn about the work that civil society is doing, the contributions that civil society is making, for all the reasons that I would give in a minute. But I think it's not just about success and hype. It's also about learning and picking up important lessons. So in some sense, with efforts such as this one, you know, I think we should more and more also spotlight the places where civil society hasn't done so well, and pick up on things that we should not be doing because we now know that, you know, those things don't work well or that they don't solve problems. or that they even cause problems or cause other problems. I think it's useful to balance out the storytelling from what is good and positive, but also to acknowledge that there are areas where civil society may be falling short and can benefit from self-reflection, but also from working with others, as you say in the report. So just a couple of things in reaction to the report. I think my starting point would be to say that civil society organizations in the form of NGOs, so if we just stay specifically with NGOs, create jobs. And they create jobs for people like you and people like myself, but they also create jobs, so direct jobs in terms of people who work in these organizations and therefore contribute to the economy in the sense that people pay taxes and what have you. But they also contribute to indirect jobs in terms of all the things that civil society organizations in the form of NGOs pay for. So hotels, the service industry, there are organizations that strictly rely on local caterers. Those are all, contributions to the economy in tangible ways that can be measured. I think often we don't talk about this enough. And for me, it's important to raise up these issues, partly because this report is being launched in the context of a wider conversation about reimagining civil society and the role of civil society, and to address some of the challenges that civil society faces. As you know, there have been questions about civil society credibility over the years, partly because sometimes civil society is not seen to be representative of the communities on whose behalf they carry out work. But also, the perception that civil society organizations basically receive grant money from foreign organizations and create a certain type of elite, that basically enjoys, the benefit of being in communication with foreign donors. And so, I guess in some sense, we could say that in some places, particularly as we see more and more the conversation on decolonization being appropriated by new authoritarian governments, we see civil society being cast as representatives of foreign interests against their own countries. So I think against that backdrop, that there are all these problems facing civil society, and we are in the process of thinking continuously about how do we reimagine and recommunicate the role of civil society. This kind of report actually becomes very important. So in some sense, I think keeping the broader context in mind helps us to actually narrow down some of the specific things that are useful to mention, including that civil society creates jobs, and jobs are important for every stakeholder, including government. And so I think that piece should stand out. But I guess, the other pieces are the things that you mentioned in the report about the social, economic, and political contributions that civil society organizations make. So let me just say a couple of things about this. One is that, civil society, again, in the form of NGOs particularly, come up with new ideas, they catalyze new ideas themselves. And these ideas are not necessarily just applicable to the work that civil society organizations do. Actually, what ends up happening is that these ideas catalyze new businesses, they catalyze new ways of thinking about solving particular problems, as we see with the growth of social enterprises, and also more and more with the growth of the field of impact investing. There are ways in which all of these, ideas that civil society organizations come up with really catalyze change across the board. And with impact investing, we know that there's more and more conversations about how do you take an inclusive approach to investing that elevates certain constituencies. With gender, for example, how do you elevate the questions around gender as a way of thinking about deploying capital? So more and more civil society is connecting with the private sector, with government, in ways that help to catalyze new ideas that solve economic, social, and political problems that countries encounter. So you would specifically ask me to talk about how civil society groups can use the findings of the report. And I'm going to end with this and one more point. I think it's important, going back to where I started from, for civil society organizations to highlight the economic contributions that civil society makes in society wherever they are. It's a good way to make a business case. It's a good way to address some of the questions around where does civil society stand relative to our country's progress, and the perceptions around where does civil society stand relative to their own benefits versus the benefit to the communities. The second point is that I think the report, as you mentioned, in terms of looking at academic institutions, government, the private sector, and what have you, actually should be a building block to help civil society organizations to make the case for how they relate with other types of organizations that may not neatly fit within their own way of working. So, for example, work with research institutions. As Nana, and others would know, the idea of connecting research to the work of civil society is one that has been discussed, over and over again over the last 10 years. And part of the thinking is that civil society organizations are solving problems that on an ongoing basis need evidence. On the other hand, research institutions are always looking for problems to research and address in a way that is relevant to the constituencies that they're researching. So that symbiotic relationship can be something that would be useful to emphasize building on a report like this one. And then the third is about catalyzing storytelling. How do we tell the stories of civil society? In some sense, the narrative of pro and anti-country is the perception around whether or not civil society's work complements government. And I think to tell the story in a way that shows the tangible contributions that civil society organizations make would be something that is useful to do. Lastly, I think, as I started by saying, that it would be useful for us to think more and more about how we build civil society legitimacy by showing that the work that the organizations do are about addressing important problems that communities face, so that the problems that civil society organizations work on are not just, out there and not connecting with the constituencies that they serve. The final point that I have is about just a particular point that was made about the free rider. And it's not a substantive critique, but I think it's just to say that for me, there's a question about service-oriented organizations and how much the delivery of a particular service. So for example, palliative measures to help people to deal with, your report talks about a welfare approach, palliative measures to deal with an immediate situation of hunger. I wonder the degree to which that can lead to the development of agency and economic autonomy for people. So in some sense, the notion of the free rider may be a problematic framing for people who are in countries and communities where, even though they've received immediate assistance for their problems, the substantive structural problems haven't necessarily changed. So I think in some sense that, that framing may be problematic in terms of communities that don't have any other way, and the assistance that is provided really only solves an immediate need that they have. So that's kind of one point that I wanted to point out, from just looking at the material that you shared. But overall, I thought this is a really helpful piece of work that you've done that really highlights important things about the work of civil society in our region. And I hope everyone would read it. And once again, congratulations on the work that you've done. And I look forward to the conversation this morning.
Thank you very, very much for that very rich eagle-eye perspective on this piece of research. And, I think the remarks you've shared are worthwhile and worth noting. And I'm sure, as civil society actors, researchers interested in, exploring the work that civil society is doing, we will build on these remarks to make sure that future documented pieces will, equally capture some of these wonderful reflections. At this juncture, I would like to call on Dr. Solomon. You have been the brain behind this great work with a wonderful team across the region. What are the findings that you collated and you have to share with us this moment? Dr. Solomon? And while Dr. Solomon is setting up, for those who are just joining us, thank you very much for joining. Si vous voulez suivre les conversations en langue française, bien vouloir utiliser l'icône de l'interprétation en bas de votre écran, vous choisissez la langue française, puis vous allez suivre les conversations en langue française. Et si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez partager dans le chat et nous aurions le temps de prendre toutes les questions. And if you have any questions, as you know, the findings are being shared with us, feel free to note them down in the chat, as we will have a dedicated space to discuss and interact on some of the emerging questions, issues, and contributions that will be coming from us all. Yes, Dr. Solomon, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, Jim. I just want to use the opportunity to thank the Executive Director, Nana, and the team at WACSI for putting this meeting together. I mean, it couldn't be more important than this. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you some highlights. I mean, I think from the conversation we had, Jim, I'm giving about just a little over 20 minutes, I think 25 minutes. I don't know what to say as an academic in 25 minutes, but there's so much in what we did, and this is just by way of highlights to kickstart the conversation for this morning. So I also want to thank my colleagues, Dr. Yabua from KNUST, also Ebenezer Odame, and our colleague from Nigeria, Dr. Abba. He was my mate at the fellowship at WACSI, I think about 5 years ago. I mean, we had a good time together. And Dr. Beranjan Anwe from Cameroon, and also Hannah Ayamba, the indefatigable lady who also helped so much to make this possible. I believe we are all on the call, and where necessary, we will come in. So let's begin to look at the contribution of civil society organizations to the economic, social, and political development of West Africa. When it comes to civil society's significant contributions, I mean, to development in the region, it's not in doubt. It's never been in doubt. I mean, it's been recognized even by WACSI's own work in 2015. It was widely recognized. The civil society has played diverse roles, and it's recognized by many, but like Nana was making the point, the evidence has been very anecdotal and not so coordinated, not so comprehensive. We take bits and pieces from here and there. So the existing analysis actually failed to, you know, comprehensively appraise, I should say, the roles that civil society organizations are playing in contributing to development across the region. So we are unable to, in the best way, look at the real social, political, and economic development roles of these organizations. Besides the global challenges we've had with COVID, Russia, Ukraine, and other challenges, you know, some being conflicts and others natural disasters, and the problems that these have resulted in on the continent has made many to actually question the effectiveness of the social protection systems that these organizations claim to have put in place, because the challenges have been bare, and the effects have been very dire on countries and citizens across the region. And this is igniting the questions that have existed over years about the tangible, roles and contributions of these organizations, the outcomes they've had, and whether they could even be measured at all in the face of the current challenges. So we were happy to be part of this effort to document, if you like, the contributions of civil society organizations across the region on these fronts, the economic front in particular, because that has largely been ignored in the literature and all of that. So that is work commissioned by the West Africa Civil Society Institute and with funding from the Ford Foundation. We sought to document how these CSOs are contributing to the social, political, and economic development of the region. And also the second leg was to look at the innovative roles that they could play or uphold to, make this development effort even more insightful. So it was a regional study that sought to cover 15 ECOWAS countries and also included Mauritania, Chad, and Cameroon in the analysis. We sought to identify the economic contributions of the civil society organizations. We also wanted to identify their social and political contributions, and also to document, like I said, the reimagining roles of these organizations. I wouldn't give too much of a background because the time is limited, so that we can look at a few highlights from the findings to anchor our discussions for this morning. An important thing I would want to touch on is the issue of measuring development. It's very contentious, and several variables have been suggested to try and gauge what development is from different areas. So we try to side as an interest in this particular research with the school of thought that the measurement of development should be a bit more flexible, because it's an institutional phenomenon, and we needed to be a bit flexible. And scholars recommend a set of these variables: poverty reduction, job creation, technology, good governance, and other such indicators, gender, political participation, to be some of the indicators that could be looked at when we are talking about trying to gauge development. So in the present study, we tried to develop our indicators along these lines, to help the goals of the research. And it's in line with the Sustainable Development Goals that we need to set in context, because like I said, measuring development is not, there's no one straight way of doing that from any consensus approach. So we look at efforts that contribute to hunger eradication, good health, well-being. We look at quality, accessible education. We look at gender equality, clean water, and sanitation. We consider these efforts. Others include job creation, economic growth, efforts towards that, innovation, infrastructure development, inequality, promotion of peace, justice, and building strong institutions. these are some of the areas we look at in trying to gauge what we did. So in line with the extant literature, and also in line with CSO present activities, you know, and programs, the economic construct we had of development includes knowledge and technology transfer, job creation, poverty reduction, public finance, you know, activities of public financial management, I should put it that way, and economic policy considerations, where some of the items that make up our construct of economic development indicators. In the political context, we look at good governance, human rights, and democracy as standard criteria for assessing development. On the social side, we consider education, water and sanitation, gender equality, women empowerment, conflict prevention and management. We also consider rural livelihoods, you know, as indices, even though there is a way that this threads into, for example, improving rural livelihoods, very economic in one sense. So this is how we try to deal with the concept. But of course, like I said, we need to quickly get to what it is we found, which is the most important part of our meeting today. We use primary and secondary data sources. I mean, some of the data we use had been gathered already. I mean, from some reports and other sources. We rely on primary data sources. We went out, collected data. Our participants were mainly CSO practitioners and some academics, and also complemented by other institutional actors. Even we included at some point the citizenry and some traditional leaders to have their perspective on what we were doing. We developed a CSO roles and contribution assessment tool, the RCAT, which we piloted among 15 CSOs who were not included in the sample we are presenting today. And the RCAT had a very high reliability level. So what that means is that this could be a tool that we could use, you know, beyond now to consistently track efforts being made by CSOs to contribute to development. So that was the tool we used. And aside this tool, we conducted some interviews, and using interview guides and focus group discussion guides, that was also developed through a lot of reflexive efforts. The strategy for the data collection, we did a survey with the tool I just talked about, the RCAT. We conducted some semi-structured interviews. We did about 45 interviews across the 15 countries. And we also received responses from about 300 and more than 300 and I think 90 or so responses. And after cleaning, we had valid responses of about 379, which was used for our analysis. Then we held 2 focus group discussions because of mainly the language differences. We held an English version of our discussion and had We used a lot of virtual platforms like we are doing today to try and reach many of our respondents, our participants as well. Obviously, for mainly financial considerations, because that was going to involve so much traveling across the region. So that is what informed that. We obviously, as you can see, we are dealing with quantitative and qualitative approaches, and so we end up with quantitative and qualitative analysis. Simple descriptives, were used for the quantitatives, and the qualitative was through thematic analysis using Brown and Clark's 6-stage approach, very reflexive. We have some methodological reflections that we share. We say limitations in some sense. The study relied mainly on virtual interviews, like I said, and that had its own challenge, despite its effectiveness in giving us a wide range, we faced some challenges that I'm sure if we were traveling to each of these countries, it would have been a bit different. The analysis, as we would find in the report, does not carry out a country-level comparison of many of the variables that we had. And the reason was very, very simple. There were variations, very wide variations in terms of the number of responses obtained from the various countries. That doesn't make it methodologically sensible to do country-level comparisons. So future studies maybe could consider doing proper proportions to compare the countries and the organizations. They are not the same. Ghana, for example, throws in a lot more organizations and what they do in this respect. Nigeria, obviously, huge numbers. Compared to Guinea and a few other countries, they are not the same. So that's a point to note. Now let's look at some of the distribution of the organizations we dealt with. We had many of our organizations, over 26% of our organizations, the responses coming from Nigeria, followed by Ghana, 19% from Ghana. So 72 organizations participated from Ghana compared to Nigeria's 101. And the others follow suit. So this gives clarity to the point I was making earlier about our methodological reflections and all. There are other background characteristics, I would want to just mention, being the types of organization. We had national level and regional level CSOs, at the sub-national level. We had community-based organizations, we had networks and coalitions, we had philanthropic organizations, trusts, and other foundations like that. The main working approach of these organizations, majority of them were into capacity development. Then we have advocacy, service delivery, and of course, policy influencing being the least represented in terms of approach to work. Then the major sources of funding, obviously, we have the leading source being international, or if you like, external donors sources. We also have some multilateral agencies coming in this fold, also falling within this fold. We have individual donations, that were also very significant in terms of the funding that the organizations work with. There were also local donors and foundations, government agencies, very limited philanthropic organizations, and some private organizations also supporting some CSOs, very limited. But in terms of budgets, these organizations were a bit disproportionate in terms of their estimated annual budgets. We had many of them falling much lower than $20,000 a year, and others having significant sources of, should I say, funds, also had bigger budgets, I should say. But on the contribution to economic development, just a few highlights. We try to get the general perspective on what the areas CSOs are working very hard and contributing in terms of development. And we have some key areas that are talked about by participants, you know, across board. We have employment creation, we have economic policy contributions, we have entrepreneurship, we have income and expenditure contributions. I mean, the organizations themselves bring in a lot of resources and therefore contribute to the fold economically. And one key area that the general perspective favors in terms of the work of civil society organizations in contributing to development, general perspective, is poverty reduction. A lot of participants agree that CSOs do a lot in terms of poverty reduction. Economic policy, not as much, and ensuring effective public financial management, not as much. But when it comes to poverty reduction, the general thought is that CSOs do so well. And when it comes to employment as well, CSOs are contributing a lot in these areas. We also talk to the specific CSOs on what contributions they are making specifically in which areas. As you can see in this chart, these are some of the key areas that CSOs are contributing. We have poverty reduction in terms of the specifics coming up tops in terms of how CSOs are contributing economically. And this is followed by job creation. And one would wonder why CSOs, we say CSOs are creating jobs, but they are indeed, because the data hasn't been collated, but evidence existing shows that CSOs, even the organizations themselves, like one of our experts just said from Ford Foundation, have been employing good numbers. According to the Integrated Business Establishment survey that was done in 2015 by the Ghana Statistical Service, if you compare the employment numbers of the government in that year to that of civil society organizations, and in this case, it's even fair to put to NGOs and all of that, it's very interesting how the numbers come up. while the Ghanaian government employed 491,760 people, the CSOs employed 285,579 people in 2015. This should give you an idea that if we were to track the employment figures, you would have a very interesting idea of what CSOs are doing in terms of providing employment and also reducing poverty. One of our quotes here says that we have trained up to more than 500 people in livelihoods through support from organizations like Oxfam, Novid, and contractor organizations like ECOWAS, EU. A lot of people have been trained on livelihood and empowered to be able to stand on their own. So economically, NGOs have contributed a lot. So a lot of people have gotten jobs through this, and they are working. This is a quote in the report from a CSO official in Nigeria. And there are many such efforts, across the region in the respective countries that the organizations are reporting of. During the beginning, in a case we encountered and captured in this report also, during the beginning of this planting season, we were able to provide organic seedlings for farmers, maize and groundnut, to 300 farmers. So with the groundnut, most of them are harvesting now. We are yet to do the assessment of the revenue that they will get at the end of the day. But you see that because the seedlings are good and they may have had rain, the harvest can be very good. So we are expecting that by the close of this year, the harvest season, we would have done an assessment to see how much impact we have made for them this year alone. But in the previous years, we did this project for some communities in the East Gonja district, and this is a case from Ghana. They were doing aquaculture. We helped them to do tilapia cultivation, and these farmers, they invest, and from the seedling to the harvest season, they are able to invest like 30,000, that is about $2,159. And then during harvest, they got like 65,000, about $4,679 US dollars, which they replow into their business. So there were many of these cases and encounters during the field work that the organizations are carrying out. And you'll be amazed to find that we are not talking about organizations with amazing resources, so much to put in, but very small organizations doing so much with the little resource they have. On the social side, generally, the perspectives from the participants is that the organizations are doing much better when it comes to gender equality and women empowerment. And before I continue, you would realize that once you get a copy of the report, you realize that we take our time to also look at the level of priority that each of these organizations place on these activities. So it's not every organization that gives priority to, for example, agric or, gender issues and all of that. We also try to gauge their level of priority given to the various things we look at. They are doing so well in gender equality and women empowerment, access to social services, also conflict prevention and management, humanitarian crisis and disaster as well. We proceed to look at the specific organizations and how they are doing aside this general perspective. And you would see here that when it comes to the social side, gender equality and women empowerment has been the area that CSOs in the region are doing so well in terms of their contribution. This is followed by education, and then we can talk about children and youth welfare. There are so many other areas, conflict prevention, rural livelihoods, and all of that, but it depends on the specific regions. For example, if you were talking about organizations from the northeast part of Nigeria, Adamawa, and the Bay states, you realize that they, in those details, they contribute a bit more towards conflict issues. But generally, gender equality and women empowerment has been a very focal area that the CSOs are working very hard and doing so well in. Then education, and of course, children and youth. In relation to this, we have a case here from CEDA Liberia, supporting citizens' initiative for development in Africa. This CSO in Liberia implemented a women's economic empowerment and participation project that was aimed at improving the livelihood capacity of 7,300 rural women, smallholders, and young women in some selected rural communities in Liberia. And so far, 7,300 rural women, smallholders, smallholder farmers have enhanced livelihood, leadership, participation in their various communities, households, organizations, and their associations. A similar case in Ghana is WUSDA Ghana, a civil society organization in the north, which developed and implemented a water, sanitation, and hygiene project, which sought to provide water and sanitation services to households and institutions such as schools and other public places. And with this project, an estimated 5,000 households and institutional latrines had been provided across the region, with about 60 water provision and storage facilities constructed for schools and for communities during our data collection. So the organizations are doing a lot in terms of their various contribution to development, even social. But one interesting thing you would find is that when it comes to their contribution to these areas, in the report, you find that the effectiveness of the organizations is not the same. It's not the same. You would realize that at some place we try to show the effectiveness of the organizations in improving the selected social indicators. Let me give an example. You would realize in our report, we found very interestingly that when it comes to education, community-based CSOs were very effective. When it comes to their contribution to education, they were very effective. When it comes to rural livelihoods, they were very, very effective. But if you compare these organizations to other national CSOs and regional CSOs, you would realize that they run short a bit when it comes to gender equality and women empowerment. But there were areas that they were very effective. Compared to all the other organizations, community-based organizations were found to be more effective when it comes to water and sanitation provision, for example. So these are some of the details you will find in the report. And it should get us to begin to interrogate and to find out why it is so, and also to guide us in terms of if you were engaging in this project, which organizations are more likely to be effective in implementing your projects and all of that. So this I thought to point out as an important point to note. Let's look at some of the political contributions of these organizations. And like I said, these are just highlights. There's just so much to look at. Generally, the perspective is that CSOs are doing much well in terms of contribution to human rights compared to good governance. And also, when you put all the items that come under democracy, then their democratic efforts, also rated high in terms of the general perspectives on how CSOs are contributing to development. In terms of the CSOs themselves and their specific organizations, what they have done, this is how it comes out. Quite similar to the general perspective in terms of how CSOs are contributing. In the specifics, the organizations seem to be contributing more in terms of what they report, which we have captured here, towards human rights. More towards human rights compared to other areas. Then when it comes to inclusive political participation also, they are doing better compared to other areas. For example, election management is one of the areas that was talked about. But here again, human rights top the chart. So politically, the organizations are contributing a lot. And here, if you look at the type of organization, if you look at the type of CSOs, the organizational characteristics, we try to triangulate that with the effectiveness in improving these political indicators. And you realize that when it comes to inclusive political participation, for example, regional organizations do better. And these organizations are also doing better in terms of human rights and such related activities. So we've created a platform where for 3 years throughout our Flow project, we were able to do a training called Demystifying in collaboration with other partners. We were able to bring women from rural parts, train them, increase them, motivate them, coach them. And today, as I tell you, in the country, we have a lady who is the district commissioner of a district, resulting from their activities. So there were a number of these cases reported, some of which are captured in the report as well on the political front, how well CSOs are doing and the various ways they are contributing to development. But while they are making these efforts and many more, there are so many barriers, so many challenges that the CSOs face, for which reason their efforts to contribute to development have not been at the optimal level. What are some of these barriers that they face? The top challenges of the CSOs have been funding. That animal comes up each time there's a conversation on their effectiveness in contributing to development. Funding is a huge challenge, and not just funding, but the inability to raise funds locally. So this will be is a very useful finding for institutions that work on capacity building. They need to look at the capacity of CSOs to source funding locally. There isn't, but the capacity is also not there. And there is inadequate support from the government. It runs through nearly, should I say, all the countries. All the CSOs sing a chorus of not getting support from the government. Then there is this same funding issue, which comes third as a significant barrier, which is the excessive dependence of these organizations on donor funds, which have become very unpredictable and dwindling in our current global circumstances. There is also inadequate support from the private sector and the lack of continuity in civil responses. So challenges emerge, there are issues, the responses come, but it doesn't get sustained. It's also a challenge. It makes the sustainability of the development efforts quite difficult. Then we can look at so many other issues. Coordination was paramount. The lack of coordination was a big issue in the sector. And staffing issues, particularly for the smaller organizations, staffing is an issue. There were cases where you get a staff beginning to get a bit well-trained and a bit experienced, and because the pasture is not green, they obviously move on to other international organizations mainly, So staffing is an issue. A lot of experienced staff move around and leave the smaller organizations and all of that. So these are some of the challenges they face. I'm sure we can interrogate these and even others later. Let me share my experience. This is a quote from Nigeria. A big organization in this country, in Abuja, for instance, when they had serious fraud, they brought an external auditor to do the auditing. After the external auditor finished the work, they went behind and hired him as a senior finance manager. What's that? Civil society. The development work is not where people come to make money. This is a quote from one of our participants. And this goes into the issue of corruption, even within the sector, which doesn't come up so strong as the top barriers, but also a barrier in the sector. Some of these minor ineffectiveness and practices by certain organizations. Then another quote says, I think one long-standing challenge has been the financial challenge, which we just talked about, because we are an organization that does not make money. So basically, we fully depend on the grants that we are able to generate through our lobbying and our networking. So sometimes we have very fantastic ideas that we want to implement, and we will not have the required financial capacity to implement them. That somehow hinders our development effort. So this also affects the issue of priority. So they are on the ground, they are local there, and you find the details. I mean, they want to implement the projects, but they can't. And the one who brings the project now decides which areas I'm interested in putting them in. And so what would have been priority on the ground doesn't get done, but the priority of where the funds is received from. Then also we can talk about the lack of coordination. The lack of coordination in our sector results in duplication of activities, which is worrying. When there is no collaboration, CSO resources and impact reduce. This further results in tokenism in service delivery, which lacks long-term development impact. So one other challenge we came across is this challenge of collaboration. So, and there is no coordination of activities. Even within regions that are facing humanitarian crisis, it's worse. Everyone is providing a response and it's not coordinated. And so I remember an example we had where they were supposed to be distributing school bags, and another organization also came with school bags and other things. And so someone who needed school bag has 2 school bags and yet doesn't have a sandal. So you have responded, but it's not effective because nobody knew what the other organization was doing. And so we ended up having our activities duplicated. That's just one example of how duplication could be very problematic in trying to engender development. So there is general consensus that there is a need to, if you like, reimagine CSO roles and have a rethink of what CSOs should do or must do to effectively contribute to development. So much is being done, but there is near consensus among CSO practitioners that there is the need to reimagine CSO roles. And here we can look at some very interesting areas. I don't know whether I still have time, but this is an area I was hoping I still have time to talk so much about. I don't know, Jim, do I still have time?
Your time has actually been exhausted, but given the importance of this particular component, maybe you can take 5 minutes to just.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So, I mean, we can have this conversation further. I mean, and there's so much on this in the report as well. The need to promote social accountability becoming a central focus of CSO activity was really raised. You know, the thought is that we needed to reflect on the role as instruments of transparency, and accountability, becoming a core role that CSOs should focus on, rather than the existing, if you like, attempt to shift focus to service delivery much more than participating in social accountability. And the thought was that the traditional approach, or if you like, framework of that exists regarding institutional boards, parliamentary oversight and select committees, and elections and the media are all failing. And therefore, civil society needs to take the role of social accountability and transparency a bit more seriously. There is also a redefinition and enhancement of collaboration efforts, you know, and the
I think we lost Dr. Solomon. But thank you very much, Doc. I'm sure you will be joining. Okay, we lost you for a bit. I think your mic is on mute. Maybe you can just conclude so that we hear what other perspectives on this are.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so the point has to be made that CSOs are doing very well in these areas, but there is a need to reimagine the roles we play. And once you get a hold of the report, for example, I would wish that the sector will look more closely at the reimagined roles, you know, that have been suggested by yourselves, you know, in terms of how we should relook and rethink activities of civil society organizations, redefining partnership and collaboration efforts, becoming, if you like, public-private partnership brokers as CSOs, enhancing CSO and state collaborations as an important way of being able to effectively deliver development, and also looking at how to enhance CSO collaboration with the private sector, which has been largely ignored in many areas. But there's a need to collaborate with private sector actors more deliberately, you know, and tap into their strengths, opportunities, and potential in the sector, and also develop strong collaborations with academia to be able to do, if you like, data-driven advocacy. A lot of the organizations are doing advocacy, but we want, according to the participants, advocacy that is data-driven is what CSOs should focus more on. And we can look at other areas of advancing technology, the use of technology that is human rights sensitive and all of that, because AIs are taking over and there's a need to rethink our roles and concentrate on how to make sure that these new technologies are not just robots that are thrown into the system that are not respecting the rights of people. So that has been our finding, and the need to concentrate on capacity building and all of that. I would want to conclude by saying that this study actually offers us a good appraisal of how CSOs are contributing to development in their various areas of work. And it helps us to look at the priority areas of different organizations when it comes to contributing to development. The insights that it gives into CSO's role and contribution to development, you know, that is offered in the study report actually would help in shifting discussions on CSO's contribution to development from generalities, to specific efforts that are being made with specific outcomes. And it proves also the report that using the RCAT, which we have developed, the CSO's roles and impact can be gauged, more systematically. It provides a framework for continuous assessment of the sector's organizations and their value contribution to development in the region. It is clear from the report that CSOs are invaluable in their development roles, considering their many roles at community, national, and regional levels. Nonetheless, their activities are affected by these funding challenges, the lack of coordination and collaboration, and the unfavorable environment that they work within in discharging their activities. But like I said, there is the consensus that we need to rethink our roles as CSOs and reimagine how we could effectively contribute to development in the region. So the roles, the views, I should say, that have been offered in this report, considering the reimagined roles, should be able to start some debates on the kind of civil society that we want here in West Africa. Thank you for giving me the audience.
Thank you very much. The findings were so mouth-watering, attractive that it was so difficult to tell you that your time, was up. And many of our, participants here are agreeing with you in the comments. And there is this very interesting comment from Habakkuk Parker who says, it would be an honor to have the conversation beyond this Zoom. He's all the way in Liberia, and I'm sure that is really something that is worth thinking about to ensure that conversations, particularly on this report and the reimagined roles of civil society, is taken beyond this online space. Beltui, also thank you for, re-echoing, or reaffirming, some of the findings that have come in the report. It says, I think the issue of limited funding has been echoed over time as traditional revenue sources fluctuate or remain restricted. The CSO sector must get creative to ensure taking into account. And, the elements, the recommendation that you talked about, the need for CSOs to collaborate with the academia, this is actually a product of such a collaboration. And I think many of us should learn from this and see that it is worthwhile, to do so. At this moment, I would like to invite, some civil society actors who have had, the opportunity to follow this conversation critically, to just share some quick thoughts with us. We have Rosalind all the way from Liberia. The report highlighted the contribution that civil society have made, towards democratic advancement across the region. And Liberia stands as an example where we are all clapping and saluting the people, and most importantly, the civil society actors that you are, for the work that you've done to make us see this peaceful change in government in your country. But looking at this specific report and the reimagined role of civil society organizations in the region, what really comes to mind as something that you would hammer on for us civil society actors and organizations to keep or take into consideration as we do our work? Rosalind, permit me to just say you have 5 minutes to just highlight those quick thoughts that are coming to mind. Rosalind?
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts in your report, and also to be able to share during the launch of this report. A lot has been said, but for me, CSO contribution across the region is no different. I just like for us to look at the re-emerging roles, like how we re-evaluate CSO roles. And I thought to look at two ways. Looking at CSO roles internally and externally. So for internally, we need to be, CSO being more robust, and CSO, all we know, we already understand that our role is unbending in the quest to keep government feet to the fire. That's the external role. We should be able to take into account understanding our roles within CSO, our function, and making sure that we continue to maintain public trust and confidence. So what it brings to my mind the issue of our credibility. If we say we want to hold government feet to the fire, internally we need to re-examine ourselves. What are we doing that making government to lose trust or making government not to see us as partners is something that we need to re-look at. Also, making sure that government see us as partner and that in government funders and donors see us as partners, because many times government see us like we in some competition or we there to antagonize the government. But it's for us to reach to that point of engaging or looking at more engagement strategy that will make government to come to the point of seeing us as the partner. So in my presentation, I try to look at, especially we talk about at the regional level, what are those things that we need to look at is to be able to do some partnership at the regional level. For example, Liberia, Ghana, there are things that we all try to address together. But then looking at our roles in the region, what can we do to be able to support each other? Because when you look at the region, we all share similar, we all have similar needs. We all have similar challenges. So over the period, NIPO has been working with other groups. For example, NIPO, Delft Afrique, Ghana, Delft Afrique, US. We were able to partner to do a proposal to address a particular situation. The same as Defense for Children International, the local issue affecting children in the region. Let's take, for example, you got Sierra Leone, you got Guinea, you got Liberia, they partner to do this. So it's something that we need to look at and see how we can partner together, because when you look at a CSO, we all do have that same strength. So what is it that you are doing that I can tap in to support you, and that in the end it will benefit the region? And I think that's the role. I think if we play that role, I think we'll be able to see a more robust civil society in the region. I'll stop here.
Thank you very, very much for hammering on those very important points. And I would like to invite you, Audu Liberty. You know, you are in a country with wonderful organizations, you know, that's Nigeria, and of course, organizations that stand as models. Yet this report highlights the need for us to revisit our approach, the roles we are playing. In your view, what is that outstanding aspect with regards to the reimagined roles we are being recommended to take up that you think is something worth looking into critically and taking actions to make it happen in our work moving forward. Liberty?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Let me just first of all start by thanking WACSI for this report. It's 80 pages report, and I took my time to read the report. And it's fantastic. What this means for me is that people actually understand the importance of documentation and the importance of writing this kind of report. It's a fantastic one, and thank you, WACSI. And I pray and I hope that the report doesn't just end on shelf. However, I think that there are a few things that that are striking to me in the report. One of which is I looked at the report and I found out that there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And if we are going to address that, is that we need to find a way to begin to address the issue of the issue of civil society impact in West Africa is one that we need to address the issue of capacity, which the report actually talked about. We need to find a way to begin to address the issue of capacity. So many of the civil society organizations do not have the required capacity to do the kind of job they need to do. So within the WACSI, at the level of WACSI, I think that is important that we begin to find a way to begin to build capacity so that people will be able to have the required skill to push for the kind of work we do. But one thing that also struck me the most is that when I look at the challenges, I was shocked. This is my first time. Honestly, I am shocked to know that from the WACSI report that 42.2% of CSOs in West Africa operate below $20,000 annually. When I saw that yesterday night, when I was reading this report, I was shocked. I said, what's that? So if 42.2 are operating below $20,000 annually, so how do we do the work? And it's only 6.6% that have more than $500,000. So if you look at it this way, it becomes a very big problem for me. So the question is, irrespective of the fact that we need to do bigger things, I think that within the WACSI and other big organizations within the West Africa, there should be conversation about development funding, like development financing. So what kind of money should be put together to do this kind of job? Do we just need to have this kind of peanuts given to a huge number of organizations, which is about 42.2%, just to go in there to do work below 20%, $20,000? So how do we begin to have conversation about development funding? And that also takes me to the conversation we had with WACSI the last time they came to Abuja for training on even distribution of resources in development work. That needs to be addressed. And when we do that, it's also going to address the issue of what they are talking about, collaboration. And that's why sometimes within the civil society, West Africa, I also feel, I pity and I also feel for smaller organizations. Because whether we like it or not, in Nigeria where I live, I think that one of the things we need to do within the civil society, that there should be effective and efficient collaboration. But the question is, within the civil society themselves and within even the government, what kind of collaboration, how has collaboration become successful in this country, in West Africa? In Nigeria, where I live, I don't think that we have up to 5 or 6 successful coalitions. And why? It's very difficult to have effective collaboration. We keep looking at ourselves as competitors rather than collaborators. So it's important that when and that's why I am very happy about the kind of research that WACSI has thrown out. It shows clearly to me that beyond the conversation about civil society, people will now know, if you pick up this report, you really begin to understand that there's really no money for development work in West Africa. And we have serious capacity deficits. And we have the issue of collaboration. And I don't want to talk about corruption, but because, of course, corruption is there. But the question is, all the work we do, how will WACSI help to put this kind of work out for everybody to see? Because the conversation about civil society or liberty, oh, you guys are just enjoying. That's average man on the street will just think you guys are just enjoying. So we constantly struggle. And that's why, even within the civil society, that's why this is good for me, because even when if WACSI goes back to have a kind of research again, you now find out that many civil society, even in Nigeria where I live, find it difficult to tell their story. And this is because what often happens is that many of us are so interested in activity-driven. People are not paying attention to impact, and which is what WACSI has done. So to the question, how would this impact the work we do in West Africa? Let me talk with Nigeria, for instance. I think that if you come to Nigeria today, where I live, politicians have taken up the soul of the state. The media, who are supposed to even be the ones speaking for the people, are being compromised. How do we begin to ensure that the only thing left, which is the civil society, is allowed to stand? For me, really, this is the most important for us. Because we've shown that if not for civil society, I doubt if Nigerian state by now would have democracy. Because we cannot discuss democracy, democratization, and reforms, particularly in the area of electoral reform. Although the 2023 election has shown that all the successes recorded in electoral reform are no longer available, are no longer visible, but that does not mean that the civil society aren't doing enough. It's important that we come back again to ask the question which WACSI, the first guy that spoke, said. What kind of civil society do you want to have? When we ask this question, then we begin to build the capacity of young men and women who will now come on board. And that's why I am so happy, because WACSI is leading the road in terms of research. Because what happened, because I always argue that one of the challenges we have had over time is that the young generation of civil society in West Africa, particularly in Nigeria where I live, aren't interested in research, aren't interested in capacity building regarding intellectual capacity. And that's why most of our advocacies don't have much of it. It's not informed advocacy. And until we begin to do that, We are not going to develop because whether we like it or not, in the Nigeria where I live, where I see the hope of the Nigerian state today lies on the hands of the civil society. Because the media is already taken. The politicians are already, the state is already a captured state. So let me conclude by saying, that WACSI research has thrown up a lot of issues. For me, beyond the impact the civil society is making, WACSI report has actually shown me, in particular, that I've always been in the misconception that there are money for there's money development financing in this country, in West Africa, but it's not true. How do we begin to talk to donor funders? How do we begin to talk in terms of individuals? How do we begin to talk in terms of philanthropies? How do we support the kind of work we do? Who leads this? Of course, I know that WACSI is already teaching NGOs how to mobilize resources. But how effective is that within the kind of work we do? And I also thank WACSI because I know that WACSI has fellowship where they train people, civil society, the issue of capacity, because capacity is the issue. I have watched lots of young people on national television discussing issues. And you discover that we do not even have understanding of what we are talking about. And that's why capacity, which is why this research is very fantastic for me. We need to address capacity. We need to find money to do the job. We need to identify the real civil society, genuine, who are actually genuinely doing the work, who are in there because of issue of money. But of course, let me stop here because I could be talking this for the next 2 hours. I know 10 minutes. I think my time is over.
Thank you very much. We appreciate, the passion that you're dedicated to this. Ismatou Diallo dit merci pour ce rapport qui tient en compte les préoccupations des acteurs de la société civile. C'est un document d'une importance capitale pour les plaidoyers. Encore une fois de plus, bravo à WACSI, Ismatou de FCD. Et maintenant, Monsieur Dori, je tiens à vous inviter pour partager vos avis par rapport à ce rapport, cette recherche qui a été menée par WACSI pour nous, les acteurs de la société civile. Dites-nous, selon les rôles innovants que la société civile doit jouer pour assurer une transformation et progrès que les citoyens ouest-africains désirent, qu'est-ce qu'il est remarquable dans ces recommandations que ce rapport tient à nous partager? 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur Emmanuel.
Merci beaucoup à WACSI. Je suis très content de parler en anglais. Je crois que ça fait un peu la balance aussi pour permettre à ceux qui ne parlent que le français ou qui sont beaucoup plus à l'aise en français de comprendre aussi ce que je veux dire. Je suis très reconnaissant à WACSI parce que j'ai déjà été étudiant à WACSI, je crois en 2017. Je vois le travail formidable qui est fait et ça ne m'étonne pas qu'une telle étude soit menée, qui soit aussi enrichissante pour le travail dans le milieu associatif. C'est une étude, on va dire, c'est une autocritique intéressante et mon intervention va être très brève car j'ai eu l'occasion de participer aux interviews et je suis ravi de voir que certains des points importants qu'on a eu à évoquer lors de ces échanges sont pris en compte dans le rapport final et même que dans les interventions de mes prédécesseurs dans ce panel ont déjà évoqué un certain nombre de points. Donc, je m'en vais très rapidement évoquer un ou deux points essentiels pour moi qui constituent des éléments importants à ajouter. C'est la façon de décrire l'Afrique, la façon de décrire les communautés africaines. Je crois que ça, c'est un très bon point. il faudra à l'avenir, avec ce contexte qui est changeant, changer aussi le narratif et la perception de l'Afrique, de notre région et les défis auxquels cette région du monde fait face. Je crois que ça c'est suffisamment important. Parler plus opportunité que misère sera désormais une phase, sera désormais quelque chose qui soit en phase, on va dire, avec les réalités, les changements qui s'opèrent en ce moment dans la sous-région, parce que l'Afrique en général a longtemps souffert de narratifs des OSC. On va dire cela si bien que on a fait d'elle le problème du monde dont les solutions ne sont ou ne se retrouvent qu'en dehors de l'Afrique, en dehors de notre région. Ceux qui ont le plus documenté, vous allez être d'accord avec moi, sur nos communautés, ce sont bien les OSC, même au-delà des historiens, ce sont les OSC qui ont le plus documenté de manière choisie, en fait, je veux dire, parce que c'est un angle qui a beaucoup plus suscité l'intérêt des organisations de la société civile pour susciter la compassion, la solidarité du reste du monde. Paradoxalement, on se rend aussi à l'évidence que cette même Afrique est convoitée à bien des égards par les autres régions du monde qui la regardent comme un grand champ d'opportunités, un sujet de beaucoup de convoitises. Donc, ce qui signifie que c'est très important pour nous en tant que OSC intervenant dans cette zone de voir quelles sont les potentialités de l'Afrique, quelles sont les potentialités dont disposent ces communautés, dont disposent ces pays-là qui peuvent contribuer au développement socio-économique de l'ensemble des populations. Je pense que ça, c'est suffisamment important pour ceux qui devront désormais imaginer des programmes d'activité, ceux qui devront désormais imaginer des interventions assez ciblées, que ce soit du domaine économique, du domaine social, tout comme du domaine politique. C'est suffisamment important. Avec un nouveau regard, comme je viens de le dire, sur nos communautés, pour prendre appui sur les potentialités et les valeurs locales en vue d'un développement socio-économique et social de la sous-région, je crois que les OSC doivent aussi intensifier leur contribution à l'innovation. On en a parlé, mais je veux vraiment insister là-dessus parce qu'un accent particulier vers la formation qualifiante des jeunes est vraiment quelque chose d'assez opportun. La collaboration entre OSC et universités, encourager le transfert de connaissances, des compétences, des technologies adaptées, comme aujourd'hui on en parle, l'intelligence artificielle responsable et qui soit à mesure de s'adapter à notre contexte et contribuer à pouvoir améliorer, on va dire, les différents secteurs de production, comme l'agriculture, comme la santé, comme les autres secteurs qui participent au développement harmonieux de cette région. Ça va être suffisamment important que l'on commence à imaginer. On parle aussi de fournitures, d'interventions des OSC qui sont très appréciées parce que on est unanime là-dessus. Il y a beaucoup d'efforts qui ont été fournis. Il y a assez de résultats fort appréciables. Mais aussi, je veux dire, la fourniture traditionnelle d'intervention des OSC, je veux parler des organisations internationales non gouvernementales, devrait aussi changer pour s'orienter vers la valorisation des compétences locales. De plus en plus, on parle de localisation et cela devient incontournable dans un contexte nouveau et changeant comme celui que nous vivons dans la région ouest africaine. Parce que de plus en plus, c'est un contexte de remise en question de la légitimité et de la bonne foi même de certaines structures étrangères caritatives. Donc, cela suppose que les organisations locales doivent davantage prendre le devant, montrer leur capacité, se renforcer en termes de capacité pour intervenir avec beaucoup plus de légitimité, avec beaucoup plus de facilité, parce que le contexte changeant aussi implique l'efficacité des actions de certains acteurs partenaires étatiques qui sont issus d'autres régions du monde. Parce qu'on voit la complexité du terrain aujourd'hui avec les violences, les conflits armés, les troubles sociaux, politiques qui sont très récurrentes. cela rend le terrain plus complexe, voire parfois très risqué pour les structures sans base locale. Et donc, c'est vraiment inviter les structures internationales dotées de beaucoup plus de capacités, de beaucoup plus de ressources, on va dire, de contribuer à renforcer les compétences locales, les structures locales, à prendre le relais. Et ça, c'est un enjeu majeur sur lequel on devra se pencher. On a parlé de l'intensification du rôle en tant qu'instrument de transparence et de redevabilité. Je crois que c'est un aspect important sur lequel on a déjà beaucoup parlé. C'est ça aussi le travail que doivent faire les organisations de la société civile à travers l'exemple, la transparence, la redevabilité qu'on pense promouvoir, qu'on pense travailler à mettre en œuvre. On doit aussi ressentir cela au niveau de la gouvernance interne de ces structures locales-là. Et le dernier point, c'est la coordination des organisations de la société civile sur le terrain. On a comme l'impression quelquefois qu'il y a de la duplication ou, on va dire, une concurrence qui ne dit pas son nom entre ces structures-là, alors que le bon sens aurait voulu que ce soit quelque chose de beaucoup plus coordonné, de beaucoup plus collaboratif, qui permette d'atteindre un résultat beaucoup plus impactant entre eux, en joignant les efforts, en joignant les ressources, en faisant en sorte qu'il y ait beaucoup plus de coordination à l'intérieur. Donc, c'est un grand défi de longue date, mais qui continue de nous poursuivre en tant qu'organisation de la société civile. Le plaidoyer et le renforcement des capacités revêtent une importance capitale à ce niveau encore. Un partenariat et une collaboration solide et active avec les États, on l'a vu dans le rapport que c'est véritablement bien ressorti. C'est très important, de telle sorte qu'on voit beaucoup plus les acteurs aller dans un seul rang, aller les mains dans la main, aller vers des objectifs communs en faisant en sorte que ce ne soit pas de l'intervention à tout hasard, mais que ce soit véritablement quelque chose de mieux structuré qui permette aussi l'État de suivre, qui permette aussi l'État d'être impliqué, qui implique le secteur privé, comme on l'a dit, parce que la mobilisation des ressources locales, c'est beaucoup plus quelque chose qu'il faut développer plutôt que d'attendre des bailleurs traditionnels pour pouvoir implémenter nos actions en tant qu'acteurs de la société civile. Je vais m'arrêter là. Je voudrais à nouveau vous dire grandement merci et en attendant d'avoir la suite de ces échanges. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Thank you very, very much for those insightful comments. We want to thank all those who are sharing insights and contributions in the chat. That is very much welcome. And sorry to those who have raised their hand to make a contribution, but unfortunately, we can't take it. We've seen the comments in the chat. Where is the report? How can I get hold of this report? And permit me to invite my executive director, Ms. Nana Fajinu, to officially unveil this report for us at this moment. Nana, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jim, and it is my utmost pleasure and honor and privilege to launch this report on the contribution of civil society organizations to the economic, social, and political development of West Africa. The report is hereby launched. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in the chat, you can find the link to the report. My colleagues will be sharing that right away, so we can access that. And thank you very much, Nana. And just to let you know, thank you very, very much. So you can find the links to access the report online from our website in English and in French. The links have been shared in the chat. Just one precision, ladies and gentlemen, to let you know that to access the report, we kindly request, your contact information. The reason is because we will want to follow up with you in the next couple of months, maybe next year, to find out how useful this report has been to you and to your work. And so feel free to just share that piece of information. And that information is being requested for most of the publications on our website. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are drawing a close to this wonderful conversation. Nana, I'm sure with this report and all the remarks we've gotten from our colleagues, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Togo, from Liberia, from Nigeria, on this report, what one word would you want to share with all of us here present on making use of the content of this report in our day-to-day work?
Well, I think that this is something that we can use, one, as advocacy, an advocacy tool for people to know, share the information, know what civil society is doing, what our contribution is, particularly with partners who want to know what is it that you are bringing to the table as civil society. I think that is one that definitely we can do. For those of us who work in the capacity building space, there are key areas that have been outlined on where civil society needs capacity, to enable them do their work. And there's a lot of work that we have to do on development financing. I think Liberty was very clear on that. That is something we cannot do alone. All of us have to work on this. There's a lot of work on shifting power within the international development space. We have to be part of this movement to really make things change so that we can get more information, and then also telling our story. I think that is so important, and all of us would have to work on that. So thanks to everybody who has made it, sitting for 2 hours to see us through to the very end of this. And let's all take this report. It's our report. It's for us. Let's take it and make use of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nana. Thank you, Franklin Kojo, for following and for the rich contributions you're doing to civil society across the region. Abdul Karim, Evariste Atoko, Fatou Abdoulaye, Eve Bazongo, merci beaucoup à vous tous pour être là avec nous. And please, just to let you know, you have the links to access the report. It's on our website. You have it now. We will be sharing the recording of this discussion with you all who took part in this conversation. We will equally host it on our YouTube platform for everyone to make use of it. The PowerPoint presentation that was shared with us will equally be shared with us all by close of day. Once again, thank you very, very much for, to all the researchers, Dr. Solomon and the wonderful team, to Ford Foundation for believing in the work of civil society across the region and supporting our work continuously over the years. Thank you for making this possible. To Emmanuel, Liberty, and Catherine, thank you for taking time to read this report and share some critical, top-notch insights on how to take these recommendations forward. Pour nos interprètes, sans vous, il n'y aura pas une compréhension unanime parmi nos participants qui sont là, qui sont les francophones et les anglophones. Pour les portugais, nous tenons à vous excuser pour ne pas être capable de faire la traduction en portugais, mais nous prenons cela en compte et nous allons tous les interlocuteurs sont pris en compte. Donc, merci pour les interprètes pour le formidable travail qui a été fait. For our media partners from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Sierra Leone, from Cote d'Ivoire, thank you for joining this conversation, and we hope that you will play a critical role to make sure that this report, its findings, are known by a wider public. To the entire team at WACSI, the wonderful communications team that made it possible for over 200 people to join us in this conversation, to the capacity development team, the policy influencing team, everyone at WACSI for making this happen. You all are wonderful, and thank you for the wonderful job you are doing. Before I leave you, ladies and gentlemen, it's not done. There is this video you wouldn't want to miss. Just stay tuned as we say goodbye. Thank you.
In West Africa, play a vital role in the region's development. They tackle issues such as poverty, job creation, reshaping the economic landscape while championing social services, gender equality, and youth welfare for inclusive development. Despite their substantial contributions, CSOs face significant challenges. These include resource shortages due to dwindling donor funds, limited support from governments and the private sector, and difficulties in mobilizing local resources. They are also often influenced by external partners, struggle with coordination, transparency, and capacity deficits internally, and face government attempts to control and restrict their activities in the name of regulation. Considering the existing challenges, our research revealed that 92.35% of participating CSOs agree on the need to redefine their roles to make a substantial impact on West Africa's development. This involves prioritizing transparency, accountability, and partnerships with internal and external stakeholders. CSOs must also adopt funding strategies aligned with market dynamics and collaborate to enhance the effectiveness of service delivery, advocacy, and capacity building. Furthermore, CSOs should focus on grassroots innovation, empowering constituents, and strengthening the link between social capital and economic progress. This transformation includes self-regulation, facilitating connections between constituents and policymakers, and advocating for responsible technology use. Individual CSOs should emphasize their contributions and collaborate to maximize their impact. They can explore technological innovations for fundraising, consider social entrepreneurship, and seek flexible funding from donor agencies to ensure sustainability. Lastly, effective collaboration among CSOs at national and regional levels are essential to prevent redundancy. Governments should establish frameworks that enable meaningful collaboration between state institutions and CSOs in policy development and implementation. If you are eager to dive deeper into improving CSOs' vital contributions to West Africa's development, download our full research report. Civil society organizations in West Africa play a vital role in the region's development.
Thank you very, very much for that succinct summary in just a few minutes in that video. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a pleasure sharing these insights with you, learning from you on the great work you are doing, and of course, getting your feedback on this report. It is, like Nana said, it is our research. Thanks to all the 379 respondents who took part in this piece of research, and to all the thousands of civil society actors across the world who have consistently provided feedback to the numerous surveys that are coming to your way from WACSI. We do not take it for granted, and we will continue to be here at your service to provide you with the information that you need, that we need to make our work better in the days ahead. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to a restful weekend and a continuous vibrance in the great work that we are doing as civil society organizations. Let's collaborate, let's collaborate, let's collaborate from Ghana to Senegal to Cameroon to Chad to Malawi to India. Collaboration is the key that will help us unlock the doors. Merci beaucoup. À bientôt. Au revoir.
Dans le développement de la région. Elle s'attelle à résoudre des problématiques telles que la pauvreté, la création d'emplois, la transformation économique, l'égalité des sexes et le bien-être des jeunes pour un développement inclusif. Malgré leurs contributions, les OSC sont confrontés à des défis importants, notamment la pénurie de ressources, le soutien limité des gouvernements et du secteur privé, la mobilisation de ressources locales, l'influence de partenaires extérieurs, la coordination, la transparence et les lacunes en capacité interne. Elles doivent également faire face aux tentatives de régulation gouvernementale. 92,35% d'OSC interrogés estiment nécessaire de redéfinir leur rôle pour avoir un impact significatif. Cela implique une focalisation sur la transparence, la responsabilité et le développement de partenariats avec les parties prenantes internes et externes. Les OSC doivent apporter des stratégies de financement alignées sur le marché, collaborer pour améliorer la prestation de services, le plaidoyer et le renforcement des capacités. De plus, elles doivent promouvoir l'innovation, l'autonomisation des bénéficiaires et le lien entre le capital social et le progrès économique. Cela nécessite une autorégulation, la facilitation des liens entre bénéficiaires et décideurs politiques, et l'utilisation responsable des technologies. Les OSC devraient promouvoir leurs contributions, coopérer pour optimiser leur impact, explorer des innovations technologiques pour la collecte de fonds, l'entrepreneuriat social et rechercher des financements flexibles pour assurer leur pérennité. Aussi, une collaboration entre les OSC au niveau national et régional est cruciale pour éviter les redondances. Les gouvernements devraient établir des cadres favorisant la collaboration avec les OSC dans l'élaboration et la mise en œuvre des politiques. Pour approfondir la question, vous pouvez télécharger notre rapport de recherche complet. Les organisations de la société civile en Afrique de l'Ouest jouent un rôle crucial dans le développement de la région. Elles s'attellent à résoudre des problématiques telles que la pauvreté, la création d'emplois, la transformation économique, l'égalité des sexes et le bien-être des jeunes pour un développement inclusif. Malgré leurs contributions, les OSC sont confrontés à des défis importants, notamment la pénurie de ressources, le soutien limité des gouvernements et du secteur privé, la mobilisation de ressources locales, l'influence de partenaires extérieurs, la coordination, la transparence et les lacunes en capacité interne. Elles doivent également faire face aux tentatives de régulation gouvernementale. 92,35% d'OSC interrogés estiment nécessaire de redéfinir leur rôle pour avoir un impact significatif. Cela implique une focalisation sur la transparence, la responsabilité et le développement de partenariats avec les parties prenantes internes et externes. Les OSC doivent apporter des stratégies de financement alignées sur le marché, collaborer pour améliorer la prestation de services, le plaidoyer et le renforcement des capacités. De plus, elles doivent promouvoir l'innovation, l'autonomisation des bénéficiaires et le lien entre le capital social et le progrès économique. Cela nécessite une autorégulation, la facilitation des liens entre bénéficiaires et décideurs politiques, et l'utilisation responsable des technologies. Les OSC devraient promouvoir leurs contributions, coopérer pour optimiser leur impact, explorer des innovations technologiques pour la collecte de fonds, l'entrepreneuriat social et rechercher des financements flexibles pour assurer leur pérennité. Aussi, une collaboration entre les OSC au niveau national et régional est cruciale pour éviter les redondances. Les gouvernements devraient établir des cadres favorisant la collaboration avec les OSC dans l'élaboration et la mise en œuvre des politiques. Pour approfondir la question, vous pouvez télécharger notre rapport de recherche complet.